Hey, what's going on? It's your brother Malcolm Brown, and we're back with another episode of Midweek Motivation. Look, on this one, we're going to dive into a deep conversation about relationships. But before we get there, I want to introduce you all to my special guest. Her name is Stacey Flowers. Stacey is a TEDx Talk speaker, entrepreneur, and author dedicated to helping people create authentic, fulfilled, happy lives. She's been named the next global leader of her generation and listed #1 on the top 10 list of female motivational speakers. Known as the mentor in your head, please help me welcome my special guest, Stacey Flowers, to the show.
We got a long way to go. I've given everything. There's nothing left. There's nothing left.
In a world where we're so progressive, we have answers at our fingertips. But there's still one situation, one area that leaves us stumble. And that area is relationships. Welcome my special guest to the show, Stacey Flowers, where we're going to dive into a deep conversation about how can we live effective and happy in our relationships. How you doing, Stacey?
You're doing great. I'm super excited to be here.
Man, I'm super excited to have you. Man, you're very hard to get in touch with. But so tell us a little bit about Stacey Flowers before we dive into our topic of conversation.
What I like to tell my people on my morning show and everyone in my community is that I make a living through talking, which is a fascinating way to be able to live my life. I do that by way of being a professional speaker, doing executive and life coaching, and then also doing a little influencing on the social media side. So professionally, I'm just a woman who adores talking, and I figured out how to monetize it. Personally, I am the mom of a whole entire teenage human being. Like, he's 17 years old, which completely blows my mind. That's one of my favorite things in all the land to do, is to be a mom. And, generally I'm a happy woman.
Wow, that is amazing. Great segue too into my first question. What defines a happy, healthy relationship?
This is an amazing question. And I get this question a lot. I would say that there are a couple of different things, but I guess what it boils down to is the thing that defines a healthy, happy relationship is two emotionally available adults choosing to connect and relate to each other.
Wow.
And
wait, hold on. Can you say that one more time? That was dope.
Yes. Two emotionally healthy adults choosing to relate and connect to each other. And the reason why I say emotionally healthy adults is because relationships happen on so many different levels, right? Like, we're sexual, we have mental, emotional, we have physical, like we have, financial. Like, there's so many different ways that, especially romantically, when we're trying to come together, that we want to be able to relate to each other. But the thread that ties all that together is our emotion. And so if you're not emotionally available, it doesn't matter how much you dig this person, how much you connect with this person, how much you vibe with this person. If you're not emotionally available, you're going to have breakdown at one of those levels, whether it's financial, intellectual, physical, sexual. You'll have some sort of breakdown because your emotions are not allowing you to be able to connect to the other person. So for me, you have to be an emotionally healthy adult in order to have a healthy, happy relationship, especially on the happiness side of it.
Now, I definitely find that to be true, that your emotional availability definitely ties into your relationship. Let's talk a little bit about how to be emotionally available. What does that look like?
I think that it's a couple of different things. I think most people don't actually know who they are at the core of who they are. They know what they do, the things that they like, but they don't know who they are if they couldn't do the thing that they're doing. They don't know who they are if they couldn't have the things that they have. But who you are, once all that is stripped away from you, like, that's your core. That's generally, like, how like sometimes when you're dating somebody and you go meet their parents, and like when you meet their parents, you see this other side of them and you're like, oh, well, who's this person? That's the core of who they are. Because when we're with our family, we're not doing anything. We're not having anything. We're just being the essence of who we are. And so I think the first component of emotional availability is really figuring out, well, who am I if I'm not my things? Who am I if I'm not what I do? Getting some language around that, getting some understanding around that, I think really, really helps. I think that also healing our emotional baggage and trauma, like, I don't think that you're supposed to go into relationships perfect, but I do think that when you become aware that you have an issue, that it's your personal responsibility to do the work, to try to heal that, to try to manage for that, to try to get that in a better place. Because when you have like baggage and trauma and all of that prevents you from being able to be emotionally available.
So what it sounds like, Sid, What it sounds like is that you're more so encouraging people to date themselves first.
150 million%, yes. Like,
Date yourself first. Go through your own baggage. Let's not look for the other person to fix me.
exactly.
I have to fix me.
There was this meme that was going around on Instagram, and this lady was like, I was at church and my pastor said that the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with is yourself. So I'm trying to figure out why you're not in love yet. And I remember reading that and being like, yeah, like so many people don't realize, like, we're trying to find the person who's going to be with us. And it's just like, you're going to be with you. Do you like you? Do you love you? And it sounds so cliche, but it's just like, you only can give what you have, right? Like if you squeeze an orange juice comes out. If you squeeze, whatever is inside of it, that's what comes out. So when somebody squeezes you, does love come out? Because if it doesn't, guess what? You don't have that to give. Like, the only thing, you can only give what you have. And most people, when they get squeezed, most people, when they experience pressure, whether it's romantic, whether it's, any type of relationship, that's not what comes out. Grudges, resistance, rejection, all of that's in you. You can't be loving someone else if you're not loving you, and you know that you love you when life squeezes you, what comes out?
Hey man, that's amazing. Y'all better be writing this stuff down. That was so dope. So which leads me to my next question. Now that we understand what a happy, healthy relationship looks like, my next question to you will be, how do we begin that? What does a relationship start? How to begin a relationship?
I think that, again, staying in the vein of healthy, happy relationships, they start with intent and agreement. So like, a lot of people are in situationships, or a lot of people, like, you ask them, are you together? Are you not together? And they're like, I don't know. It's complicated. It's all these different things. But again, when you're an emotionally mature adult, that's my man, that's my girl, that's my fiance, that's my husband, that's my wife. Like, you're able to clearly name and identify how somebody relates to you when you're an emotionally mature adult. But when you're not, it's because likely either the intent of the relationship wasn't clear or the agreement of the relationship wasn't clear. So if I intend to be with you because I want to make you my man, and you already got a girl, then our intent is not in alignment, right? So we can't actually be in relationship with each other. So it has to start with intent. Intent has to be aligned. But after intent, you also have to get agreement, because agreement is like, well, I'm going to rock with you and what you got going on, and you going to rock with me. Like, it's not just, I want you to be my man. It's also, we going to do this together. And most people don't take the time to do that. And for some people, it happens like that. But for most people, we don't pause long enough in all of the feelings and the connection and chemistry that's going on to figure out, okay, do we have the same intent? Because I'm looking for a husband. I'm looking for a man. I'm looking for, do we have the same intent? Because if not, we'll never be able to reach an agreement. So I think our relationships, even if they're not romantic, even friendships, professional, it doesn't matter. They all begin with intent and agreement.
It reminds me of a time when my wife and I first started dating, right? And me, I just feel like I'm a super cool dude. You just supposed to be my girl. And I could never forget, my wife kept telling me, you never asked me to be your girlfriend.
There you go.
You never asked me to be your girlfriend. I was like, what you mean? You my girl. You my girl. No, you never asked me to be your girlfriend. And it got to the point to where I had to ask her.
Yeah.
I went out, got a promise ring. I said, will you be my girlfriend? She said, yes, I will.
It's important. And I think we minimize it and we're like, oh, that's so old school. It doesn't matter. But it's just like, we're still running around doing the same thing, just with new technology. Like, Facebook official has become the new way of offering a promise ring, right? But we don't understand that, like, the promise ring is between me and you. That Facebook official type stuff, that's like broadcasting and publicizing and exposing a very fragile dynamic to the world. Like, that's not the best way to establish an intent and agreement, but we do it because we're too afraid to just say, will you be my girlfriend?
Right.
Will you be my boyfriend?
You're right.
It's like, but you need to have this conversation.
Wow. And I think it's very vital too that you do keep a certain level of privacy when you're in that stage, because it's very embryonic, so anything can happen and shift the whole relationship. So you don't want to broadcast to the world that, hey, me and this person is together, and we're just now making this agreement and aligning our intent together, and then what happens if something changes?
And a lot of that broadcasting comes from needing external validation. Like, I need something outside of me to tell me that I'm in the right thing. It's just like, you got to know that from the inside. Like, you got to know that from your emotional maturity. Like, I'm in the right thing because this feels right for me. It doesn't matter what anybody else is saying about it.
So before we go to our next question, I want you to dive into that just a little bit more. Let's talk about validation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that when you don't like you, when you don't have the wherewithal, when you're not esteeming yourself, when you're not caring for yourself, when you don't understand who you are, then you have to search outside of yourself for proof that you're doing the right thing, for proof that you're in the right thing. And if a like on your picture about you and your relationship status does something for you that just sitting in the room with your person doesn't do, you are in a validation trap. And that relationship is super fragile and it's not going to last. And, you know, some of my clients that I work with on the life coaching side, like, I often put them on social media fast for their relationships. And I do that because, like, if you think about a picture, right? Like, you put up a picture, you and your guy are having a great time, and then later on that day you get in an argument. Well, it's up. And so people are still going to be commenting on that picture. So now you are literally in two different places emotionally, in the middle of this argument, in the present with your man, but then on social media, you're in this beautiful, good place that this moment in this picture has captured. And you got to manage that, and you got to deal with that. And what we're tending to do is adapt our lives to this virtual reality because there's so much more validation there. And there's a reason that the like button is not a thumbs up anymore. It's a heart, right? Like, that is a validation trap. Like, all we want is love. And so the digital space has engineered it for us to feel like we're getting love.
Girl, you are talking over here. Let me wave on fire.
But I'm just saying, like, and so many of us don't get that, like, you don't need external validation when what's between you, what's internal, what's right in front of you is real.
Come on.
And if you need that more than this, then it's not real and it's bound to fall apart anyway. So it's a validation trap. It really is.
Yeah, we're gonna have to put her Cash App up on the screen. we gotta send her at the time, girl, because you speaking over here. Okay, so I want to go to my next question. And we want to find out just a little bit more about you. So as we study Stacey Flowers, we see different pinnacles of success in your story. And I know that story had to start somewhere. So I want to ask you, how have relationships affected your life, positive and negative, to get you where you are today?
Yeah, you know, this is a little bit more of a tougher question for me, because I would say that in terms of, like, okay, all right. So I would say that at the beginning of my life, very early on in childhood and young adulthood, relationships, like, negatively impacted my life. Whether, you know, I experienced, like, a lot of challenges very early on in life. My sister died when I was younger. I was in and out of foster homes. You know, there was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of physical, sexual, emotional abuse that happened. There was a lot of separation. There's a lot of, like, attachments that were broken. There's a lot of just, you know, not really being able to trust and connect to the adults in my life because they were going through, you know, their things, you know, struggling with, you know, a father who's addicted to drugs. Like, those were my early relationship patterns, and they were filled with so much trauma and so much drama that for the most part, I was really negatively impacted by relationships. And I was someone who thought that, you know, the relationship dynamic, it was essentially me against the world, and that, like, I had to figure out how to exist and be in the world without actually relating or connecting to other people. It wasn't actually until I got pregnant when I was a senior in high school, and I was going through this experience of, like, becoming someone's mom, that I had to say, okay, what you experienced and what hurt you and what traumatized you cannot write the rest of this story, because if you let it write the rest of this story, then it's going to be you and your son against the world. But you already know what the fruit of that looks like. Every single man in my family is either on drugs or incarcerated. So I know what it looks like for a mother to take her child and say, it's just me and you against the world because too many people have hurt me, because too much damage, too much trauma. So I said, I have to be willing to heal that and figure out how to have positive relationships in order to be able to put a real legacy inside of my son and inside of my life. And so sort of with those thoughts, and I mean, I know it seems kind of crazy, but like at 17, these are the things that I'm thinking about, and I'm making choices that are around it. And I begin to intentionally forge relationships with people who I thought would help me to come out of my circumstance. And so they started to transition into more positive relationships. And I don't know how many people in your community are familiar with my TED Talk, but I talk about in my TED Talk, like the 5 key people that you need for general success and happiness. Because so many people are passive about their life and they think that, you know, you either get a good life or a bad life, fate. No, you have to be active. Like, you have to make a choice in your life. And so I talk about those 5 key people and how one of those people was a cheerleader, and she was my high school guidance counselor. And she was the one who stopped me from dropping out of high school. She was the one who helped me to go to college. She was the one who helped me to stay in college when I wanted to drop out. And slowly but surely, I built relationships with those people. And as I built relationships with those people, that helped me to be able to establish a relationship with a therapist who helped me to be able to, you know, really dive in and clear a lot of that trauma. And that helped me to have better relationships in friendships and better relationships romantically. So I would say that I've experienced sort of like a yin and a yang, like so much negative relationships at the very beginning of my life propelled me, like it compelled me to produce nothing but, you know, positive, healthy, effective relationships that allowed me to be able to establish a life and a business and a legacy that I'm incredibly proud of. So.
Wow, that was
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, you did. Wow, that was amazing.
A bit of a tangent there, but yes.
That was amazing. Look, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Stacey about what does it take to forgive someone that's hurt you in a relationship. Y'all stay right there. We'll be back soon.
Hi, my name is Stacey Flowers, and I am the author of Pregnant with Purpose. This glorious, amazing book is the first book that I wrote, and it was designed to help young parents to overcome being a statistic so that they can move forward to become a success. I am encouraging you to go right now to Amazon.com and get this book. Either get this book for yourself if you are anything like me and you are a young parent and you want to be able to have more success, or for any of the young parents that you know in your life. This book, in terms of the reviews that I've received so far, has been incredibly transformative. Inside of it, I talk about the A5 formula for reaching the success that you deserve and desire. So go buy my book.
And welcome back. So we took this question to social media, and so many of our followers was running in with responses, asking their questions. One in particular, Cortisha Brooks off of Facebook, asked the question, when is it okay to walk away?
Okay, this is a good question. I'm gonna look direct to camera because I'm gonna say something that you probably don't want to hear, that you thought was gonna be different, but it is okay to, well, let me give one caveat. Let me give a disclaimer. When you're married, I think that conversation needs to be between you, your spouse, God, and wise counsel. But for anyone up until the point of marriage, because I'm an unmarried person, so I don't want to get into married folks' business. For anyone else who's not married, it is okay to walk away when you want to. And that sounds like it should be deeper, but hear me out. Like, you are a whole entire adult. And what tends to happen is that us as adults wait for something dramatic, bad, hard, stressful, overwhelming to happen in order to walk away. But we don't do that in any other area of our life. Any other area of our life, if we don't like something, we walk away. If there's an orange shirt and a blue shirt and we're like, I don't want the orange shirt, we walk away from it. And I know it seems like it should be more intense because you're dealing with a human being, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, you should be more gracious when you're dealing with a human being and say, you know what? I don't want you. So I'm gonna walk away rather than trying to change you, rather than trying to be dramatic, rather than trying to do all of these things to have a bad bye. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make sure that we have a good bye. When I think about like the term itself, goodbye, like when is the last time you actually had a goodbye? You probably haven't had one because you're creating drama and trouble and all these other things to try to find an excuse to walk away, when if you just stood in your power as an emotionally mature adult and said, you know what, I don't want this person, and walked away, you would do yourself and that person a huge, massive, incredible favor, because it'll allow you to be able to move on to the next person that you want to be with, and them to move on to the next person that they want to be with without all this damage and trauma and all this other stuff. So that's the first point, is that like, You should walk away when you want to, up and until the point of marriage. Marriage, seek wise counsel.
Yeah,
Everything else,
go to God. You need a chair. If you're going through it in marriage, you need a chair for you, your spouse, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And go see some wise counsel. It's okay to get counseling. Go see somebody to help you. You know, marriage is the garden that God gave you, and what you sow, you will reap. So you want to make sure that you're going to seek wise counsel. You want to make sure that you're showing positivity, you're showing love, and you're showing understanding into that relationship. You can't just walk away. This commitment is forever. Remember that. So, in relation to walking away, whether the person decides to walk away or stay in a relationship, let's talk about forgiveness, because I think that's very important. I think it's very vital. If you're going to stay with somebody, forgiveness is definitely vital, because you cannot heal if you did not forgive. Also, I want to talk about the process of forgiving while you're walking away, because oftentimes people will walk away from a situation and not forgive one person and make the new person suffer from it. So let's talk about forgiveness, Stacey.
Right. So, I mean, it's cliche, but people often say that forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for you. And it's 100% the truth. Like, forgiveness is for you. And to the idea of like tying in the walking away and tying in like the process of forgiving, it's important to understand. And the reason why I tell people to walk away when they want to is because it's like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so many people are like, oh, karma's gonna get that person and karma this. No, karma has nothing to do with it. That's habit just coming back into your life. So if you walk away in unforgiveness is what's gonna be inside of you. And when life squeezes you like it does, because it doesn't have a regard for like passing over people, life's gonna squeeze you, and what's gonna come out is unforgiveness. And as you said, that's gonna spill all over into all of your other relationships. And then the new person is gonna be paying for something that somebody else did. And so it's just like, it's important, I think, to understand that, like, first of all, you forgive for you, and you forgive for you to free yourself to be able to actually move forward into the next thing that you want to be able to do. I think the other part of forgiveness is understanding, like, we are all human beings, like, and so many people want other people to be perfect, and so many people want to be like, no, but you did this, and look at the log in your eye, and look what you did to me. And it's just like, my speaking coach, I remember I was at one of his events, and he was just like, when you have a finger pointing at someone, remember you have 3 fingers pointing back at you. And realizing that, like, this person that you can't forgive, like, it sounds like, you know, it sounds like what they did to you is this horrible thing, but you have to realize that, like, you also participated in that dynamic, right? Like, you also participated in this experience of them getting to the point of doing something unforgivable. That doesn't mean that you're to blame, but it does mean that you have a responsibility in it. So you got to figure out what's in me that would attract something like that into my life. Like, a lot of people that I work with, like, they deal with a lot of like infidelity and cheating, and they're like, why does this happen to me? Why? I can't believe I'll never forgive him. I'm somebody who's never been cheated on before. People always ask me, like, how is that possible? And a lot of it is because I don't have wounds.
Stacey, I've been cheated on before. It don't feel good.
Right? No, it doesn't feel good, but like, I don't have wounds that attract that temperament. And even if I see it in somebody, I don't engage in that dynamic. I'm like, I'm not gonna rock with somebody who has a propensity to that.
And oftentimes too, say, when it comes down to forgiveness, you have to understand this. In order to truly move forward in life and go after what God has for you, you have to be looking forward. And oftentimes when you can't forgive, you find yourself keep looking in the past. Keep looking in the past. If I was to give you an illustration, it's like driving in a car, looking out the rearview mirror. Of course, you're gonna keep bumping into stuff. You're gonna keep running into walls, right? Because you're looking in the wrong direction. I need more people to understand that you have to look forward. Like the Apostle Paul said, forgetting those things that are behind me and reaching towards the things that are in front of me. I press towards the mark to obtain the high calling of God through Jesus Christ. Go after what God has for you.
And I think too, another part of forgiveness, like, sometimes, like, we don't want to forgive because in truth, we don't want to let go of some level of the pain, because it reminds us that we're alive and that we did feel and we did have. And it's just like, you got to get to the point where you're more excited about being healthy, you're more excited about being whole, you're more excited about peace than you are addicted to the drama and the pain and the suffering, because that can be just as much of an addiction as anything else. And a lot of people who can't forgive, it's because it's so much easier and more familiar to sit in that level of pain than to get back up and be like, oh, I don't have to be in this much suffering. I don't have to be in this much pain. So
memorable moment in this, don't forget, forgiveness does not exonerate the person that did you wrong, but it frees you to be the fullest authentic version of yourself, to truly live happy and truly live free. So Stacey, as we're wrapping up, I want you to look directly into that camera.
Okay.
And I want you to talk to somebody that's stuck in a relationship, that's unhappy, that can't find their way out. Stacey, what would you tell that person if they were sitting right in front of you?
So somebody that's stuck in a relationship and they're unhappy, they can't find their way out. Okay, so for me, this comes at a couple of different levels. For people who are stuck in relationships that are abusive, because that's a dynamic where people get stuck, I recommend separation and safety. Like, so many people don't understand that, like, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, you create these bonds and these dynamics where you don't feel like there's a way to get out. And the way to get out is to put yourself in a safe space and find separation from that person immediately. For somebody who's in like a toxic relationship, right? Like, it hasn't elevated to the level of abuse, but there's so much toxicity and you're like, I don't know how to get out of this dynamic. I don't know how to move. I don't know if I should go. I don't know if I should stay. And it's toxic. I think that for that one, you need time and you need to talk to like a mental health professional, because a lot of times we get wrapped up in a toxic dynamic because it's familiar and it's comfortable and there's something in me that's attracting that thing to me. So you need time in that one, and you need to truly talk to a mental health professional. Tell people all the time, work with a therapist. If the common denominator in all of your relationships is you. So if you don't like the level of toxicity that's been in your relationship, it's the you part of the relationship that needs to be worked on, and you need to do it with the mental health professional. And then I think for people who are just in damaged relationships, right? Like, something has happened where forgiveness is necessary, you want to forgive, but it seems like the damage is too much, or maybe broken relationships, right? Like, hasn't risen to toxicity, hasn't risen to abuse, but there is damage. I think for that relationship, like, you're gonna need courage and you're gonna need conversation. And conversation is, just the words back and forth, as he was saying, sow in understanding, sow in time, etc. But you're also gonna need the courage to be able to do something that you're afraid to do. A lot of times when there's damage and brokenness, like, you need to find the courage to be vulnerable. Like, you need to find the courage to stop protecting yourself from somebody that you want love from. Like, you need to find the courage to stop rejecting what it is that you actually really want. So I think if you're at that level and there's that damage and you're struggling and you're like, I don't know if I should leave or if I should stay, maybe you need the courage to leave. Like, it's scary to think about leaving this dynamic, but maybe you need the courage to leave, or maybe you need the courage to stay and then show up more vulnerable. So that's what I would offer to anybody who's struggling at any of those different levels.
Wow, thank you so much, Stacey. As we know, relationships are vital parts of our life. They could be the foundation and the framework that will build you up for success. Though they're hard to navigate and tough to handle, we have to find a resolution and live within these relationships. Like the Bible said, man was not made to be alone. So take this time, put together your relationships, work out the problems, and don't forget, be the best you can be. I love y'all. Thank you so much for this episode of Midweek Motivation. Thank you again, Stacey. Follow Stacey on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and check out her book, Pregnant with Purpose, on Amazon. See you all again.